Press start.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, I can't point to something that is objectively bad.
Yeah,
I think
would
that game
rather
is cool. It's not my
fight
personal preference.
robot dinosaurs than zombies, and that's why Horizon.
Yeah. Okay.
Horizon's always
It's
gonna
more
have-
unique.
Well, Horizon's always going to have an advantage because of those two main things. Is that I like what you're fighting; it's unique, and I love the third person. And they have also
I'm right there with
stepped
you.
up their RPG mechanics in the second one, whereas the first one was they were there. I enjoyed my going and getting my especially that OP armor, the stuff they asked you to do that. I liked that. I got all into that. But this time around, it seems to be they're leveling that up in a better way. That I'm already going. I'm gonna love this game way more than the first one.
Yeah, Horizon Forbidden West has a really strong first impression when you fire it up. Everything from, in my opinion, the way that they recap the first story, because there are pieces of the first game story that I actually had forgotten, like little elements of it, and they do a good job of recapping a lot of that. And even the character interaction as you're exploring with the character from the first game, a side character from the first game, and Aloy has someone to talk to and someone to teach while she's teaching you, kind of refreshing you, the player, on a bunch of stuff.
Aloy is a jerk, by the way, too.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
we can get to that because that's my
yeah.
biggest gripe with this game is how much of a freaking wet blanket she is. But we'll get to her in a little bit.
I have an apt comparison for everything about this game to another game.
I do think Forbidden West has a incredibly strong first impression, and I say first impression. I've probably played 6 to 8 hours, somewhere in that range total. Maybe you guys have gotten more, and that's about what I've gotten in so far.
6.5.
I'm only 4.
And it is that first impression is maintaining. Like it's not like it died away, and I'm starting to peel back some layers and see some stuff I don't like. I'm not. I've got a few nitpicks that I also had in the first game that I think are improved, but not quite there in this one. But in general, it's just incredible first impression. What do you guys think so far? And start with whatever you want to talk about with this game.
Yeah, well, I'll just throw out the comparison that I have for it. As I'm playing it, and some of the RPG elements and crafting, and even some of the platforming. It's just Tomb Raider, but it's literally just Tomb Raider in the sense that you have a wet blanket of a freaking personality as your main character, and you're doing the same things more or less, but it's open world and the setting is far more interesting, and the sci-fi elements are just super rad.
I think her demeanor is justified to an extent, but I think now that we're going into the second game, maybe by the time you get to the end, it starts to shift. But it's like, all right, we've had a whole game where she's kind of like where she's being a lone wolf, right?
Yeah.
So like she's still lone wolfing it, and it's like I get it. People have trust issues.
Well,
so I
wanted to throw out that another way that it's similar to Tomb Raider for me is that there's no. Not that all my games have to be like this, but there's no like emotional core or heart to the game, really. You're just kind of doing cool crap, and it's great. I still think this game is amazing. But that's another comparison for me with Tomb Raider. Like I'm just doing cool crap, and the story is fine, but the world building in this game specifically is where it excels, like to like no other degree. Basically, it's just
Derek. Is this
immaculate world building?
The one that you have? The special edition.
Y'all both got the same one, right?
I can't. All I can see is us sitting in a bunch of balloons. I can't see you guys.
A bunch of balloons.
Okay, go up to view at the very top right and change it to just to grid view.
Have you not been seeing us this whole time?
No, I only see your heads in balloons.
In the together mode.
Change it from like to speaker view, then back to grid view.
I got it.
Okay.
This I was
you have that.
This is the one that you have, right?
Case?
Yeah.
Yeah, the like hardcover, and then it's got a steelbook cover inside, which is
I
nice.
haven't even opened it. I'm just playing off of Tim's version he bought. I just kept it like this.
Yeah, nice. Derek and I big fans of the steelbook cases. It's very shiny.
I am too.
Nice.
I have that for a couple of games. I love them.
So my main thing with the world of Horizon is like, okay, so taking into like sort of Aloy's demeanor, right? It's like she's like one of like two people, maybe like a couple more that like actually understand what's going on in this world. So it's like she's carrying sort of like all this weight on her shoulder because also like she's literally a clone of the person that's the most important to sort of all,
Spoilers.
you know.
Yeah,
Well, I
spoilers
mean,
for
from
the
the first
game,
one.
but I
From
mean,
Spoilers
you'll
for the
find that
first
out.
game. Listen,
You'll
if
find
you're
that out
playing
as
the
soon as you
second
launch the
game,
game, yeah.
the second game spoils the first. Don't feel bad, Dan. I don't
Sorry,
feel bad.
but it's from the first game. Yeah,
The
my
second
bad.
game spoils the first game immediately
Yes.
in huge ways, like
Yeah.
right out of the gate.
But it
But it's
has
like-
to. It has to. It's a
It has
consecutive.
to.
It's like literally
Yes.
right
But
chronologically
it's like
right after.
Aloy's just so aware of what's going on in this world and why it is the way that it is. And then you have Silence and like those are the only two characters that I can think of. And then you have all these people that are just like basically
but-
essentially cavemen, you know what I mean? Like
All right.
The issue with her is she'll literally look at somebody and be like, I'm the savior. I'm the only one who can save it. Well, what do you mean? I can't talk about this right now.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
'cause
too
they-
Every
complicated.
single time.
Dude,
Like
yeah.
every single time. Well, can you
No, of
stay with us
course.
and help us? No, I can't right now. I have to go save the world. But why? Because I can't right now. I have to go
but
save the world.
but they wouldn't understand though. That's the thing.
I understand that, but you can still like
You can
like,
still
the
have her have
entire-
flashes of personality a little
the
more
entire
Well, sure.
setup
than just I can't talk
of
about
her
it. You know?
meeting. Like I went and talked to everybody. They give you like an optional quest where you can go
Yeah.
talk to all her friends, and everyone's like, "You took off right away," and she's just kind of like, "Yeah, I had to."
I had to. Can't talk about it. Gotta go. Bye.
But I
Well,
mean,
you
Okay,
know,
so
it hurt our
here's something I wanted to
feelings.
point out with this is that I understand what you're saying, Dan, where it's like, hey, it's kind of a result of her environment, her experience. I get it. But they actually give you, hey, do you want to be aggressive, smart, or loving
sure.
here?
Yeah.
And I tried. I actually reset the save and tried. She sounds and acts the same, even if you pick the loving response. She is just a
Yeah.
wet blanket of a personality. I think that's the way that they designed her character. I don't
Sure.
think it's Ashley Birch's problem because she can
yeah.
do all kinds
She's
of
doing
characters.
great. Yeah, she
It's
can.
the
So,
Chloe is so
dialogue.
different from this
I
character.
think
yeah.
it's the dialogue they give her, and it's the way they're directing her to be very deadpan, which I can get. I mean, listen, I'm a huge fan of Geralt from The Witcher 3. Deadpan isn't a problem if it's done correctly, but I don't find her to be like. Why is everyone so into her? Like, there's multiple characters
Yeah.
who are clearly into her in a romantic way.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
Well,
why?
they must
What-
sense something special about her. Well, and because she is special.
And
because
you were jumping over hoops to defend.
no,
criticism.
I'm just trying to because again, we're in a world where there's these
Dan
people.
loves
No,
Aloy.
hold on. We're in a world where these people.
He's one of them.
they
He's got
do
a little
talk-
quest sign above
they
him.
do
He's
talk
like, "Yeah, I
more-
like you."
She talks normal. I mean, the people in this world do talk normal. They don't talk literally like cavemen. They're not bashing each
Right.
other on the head or anything. But
Yeah.
like they are essentially cavemen. They are well-spoken cavemen.
I think that's a stretch. I think
No,
they're
I-
smarter than that. They're
I-
more
I mean,
advanced than that.
maybe, but I'm saying like it is. I mean, comparing it to what the technology in the world was prior, it's night and day. I think.
Maybe.
And
I don't know.
and
As you're going to that first village, which I love the name Chain Scrape, by the way. What a great name. And they say it
I
so many
almost-
times. Chain Scrape.
It's funny.
Um,
like I was thinking, okay, I got to go back to, and I forgot the name of the place, and I was like, I got to go back
Chain
to
Scrape.
Chode Scrap or whatever.
Chode Scrape. Dude, it
Chode-
reminds me
Chode
of
Scrap.
from Guardians 2 with Taser Face. It's just it's
Oh,
that type
yeah,
of taser,
dude.
you know what I mean? It's Chain Scrape. Anyway,
Some of the names are so funny
I feel like
too.
as you go, I feel like as you go through that village, it actually feels like very modern and advanced dialogue and developed people who are stuck in a very rudimentary world. Like talking to
Sure.
them, and even you've got this guy Ulvund who's kind of running the show, and everyone kind of hates him. And there's a lot of like political intrigue and subterfuge.
yeah.
I feel like it's all very modern and
No, well, that's why I said they're well spoken.
I was gonna say, I don't think it's just well spoken. I think they're very smart characters. Even your buddy at the beginning, who you give the device to, and he starts to see stuff. Dude, he handles that like a champ. Like he starts to really quickly learn and adapt and grow. And I'm like, she's cutting. In my opinion, this is part of what annoys me about her character. Is not just that she's bland in her responses to people. That's annoying, but I can get over it. It's that she is assuming everyone around her is so stupid they can't understand or help. That bothers me. So I'm like, you're just as bad as some of these other characters in here, because it's like I have to go alone. This is something I have to do alone. I'm like, look
Man,
at
I
she's
really
also
thought
she's
when she
also
gave
under
the
the
focus
impression
when she
she's in
gave
a
the
hurt.
focus to Varl, I was like, oh, cool, this is going to be like a two-person adventure,
Sure.
like another Uncharted 4
That was
Lost
actually
Legacy.
what I was gonna say. Did
Yeah.
anybody else go? I kind of wish they would do,
Right.
like, start maybe in future releases, be like create a party and make it an action RPG with several
Yeah.
characters.
Or you can pick. I want to control Varl for the whatever. Like
I do
that'd be
like
cool.
Varl's character. I actually think
too.
he just has a cool vibe about him.
Don't
but
even
even
get me
dude,
started
some of the
on
stuff
Aaron.
some of the stuff.
Aaron fucking dead.
Listen, I understand
want
he's
him
kind of an
dead.
annoying character, but some of the stuff,
I
some
want
of the
him
stuff
dead.
he says to her, I'm right there with him. Where he's like, "Yeah, all right, sorry, you got to go do important Aloy stuff.
don't
Go
know.
ahead. I know you got to get going. Go
I
ahead."
liked his
No.
attitude. Yeah.
He is passive aggressive beta male, and you guys know that. Like seriously,
She deserved it. Come on.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have been that way. I shouldn't have. No, she's being a jerk. Talk to her like she's
But
a jerk.
Again, she is to her. She's like, I
No.
need to get this shit
She's
done
an arrogant
because like the world is gonna die. Like all this.
Dan
right
would
without-
not defend her if
It's-
it was my face on her saying the words that she's saying.
Well,
He'd
if
be
it was
like,
your
"She's so
personality,
full of
your
herself."
face, then sure.
It's so funny that she spends like the first, I'm again 6.5 hours into the game. She spends so much of it saying, "Don't call me savior," but she has such a savior complex about this entire thing.
Yes.
It's
There
so
you go.
interesting about that.
That's
I have
the
no
contradiction
problem
that I'm
with
feeling
her
with
knowing that she is the only one, because she is. She
Right.
is the only
It's
one
true.
that can save
It's
her.
true. Yes.
But it's exactly what Jeff says, and him and I rarely agree on anything because he has
This
terrible
feels,
takes and
This feels
terrible
really
takes.
weird, and I'm not comfortable with this.
But I have a
of
problem with the
aggression.
fact that she acts like she's like, oh, they made a statue for me.
God's sakes.
I totally don't want it. Oh, you could actually made this look better. Like that's her mentality. Like it's almost like this is not my personality. I don't like this attention. And then it's like every 5 seconds, but I'm the savior. Do you guys remember what I did for y'all? Yeah, I'm the savior. I gotta go.
I do think, to her credit, to their credit for the character, that she's trying to leverage that to get access to where she needs to go to save things. So I do think that she's leveraging that savior position in a way that makes sense for the story.
Can I
I
just
actually,
say,
I really liked her character, and her dry sarcasm works really well with some scenes, like with Ulvin,
Yeah.
as he's being
Some characters
clearly
deserve
a
it, yeah.
political, manipulative douchebag,
Yeah.
and she responds in some great ways, and like her
Mhm.
character fits perfect with that to kind of like undermine his attempts to continue to
There's-
control the town.
There's
So
a
that was
part.
great.
There's a part where I'm at where she's like interacting with somebody who was explaining what the lenses are, where you go up to the towers and grab a lens, and she's like, "So you're a thief?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm an opportunist." And then their back and forth was like, "Oh, this is actually playful and fun." So they do have it in them. To
I had
fire
already
that.
collected like 3 of those or 4 of those, and then
Same,
so
same.
Aloy says, "I actually have some of these." She goes, "Oh, you're an opportunist as well." Like that was great. I
Yeah.
loved that little exchange. You know, there's a part coming up before the world opens up even more, which, by the way, we should talk about the open world, the way what they've designed. And there's a part where you have a potentially long exchange with a character if you want to really discover what's going on, and you can. There's an option keeps popping up that says that's enough for now, or you can ask them to keep going and explaining more. And I do think it's interesting, so you should ask
man.
them to keep explaining more.
So you and I are at the same hour length. It sounds like I'm exploring like way too much because I'm behind that.
It might
I'm
be
not
more than
there
6
yet.
to 8 hours. It might be closer to 10. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
But anyway,
I just want to add that
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't
Sorry,
know
you
if
wanted to chime in
guys,
earlier. Yeah.
if you guys enjoyed the interaction with her the first time she talks to the black ball guy, and how he puts,
Silence.
Yeah. And
Oh,
how
yes.
he puts
His
her in her
hologram?
place,
Yeah.
like basically calls her an idiot.
Yeah.
Like if you can figure it out. And I was like, oh,
So Derek is silence, basically.
basically, I
yeah, but
absolutely
also
love-
it helps that that guy's performance is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
He's fantastic.
He's amazing
he
in
was
everything.
super savage though. Like there was
He
like
did,
2
you're right.
lines that he said to her, and that she was like, "I'm angry because I'm
Yeah.
the savior," and he's
Yeah.
basically like, "Oh, I'm so glad you finally figured this out. It only took you like 3 weeks to figure,
Yeah.
or 3 months to
Hey,
figure this out."
to be clear for anyone who's listening, she actually never says the line "I'm the savior" ever. Derek is
No.
adding
she
that
doesn't.
in.
You know what? I'm
it's
getting
just
the
her-
See,
I'm getting
It's
the
how she carries
impression.
herself.
I'm getting the impression that I'm just trying to have a normal conversation. You guys are being just sexist as all hell. Is what's happening. You're being sexist. As all.
No,
Oh, of
I will say
course.
this
I
though.
mean,
No, my
if
wife.
this
walked
was
up
a
and I was-
white male, I wouldn't have a problem with the interactions at all.
There you go.
My wife
There you
walked up. I was playing it, and I was in a conversation. And it cut back to Aloy. My wife just kind of looks at her and goes, "No one's hair's that thick." I was like, "All right."
Well, they don't bathe or whatever. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
I was
Well,
like,
she's
"Listen,
got a
she's got-
beard, right?
Customers are.
She's got extensions. It's
She does have a
fine."
big beard.
Yeah,
You
she
guys
has a
just-
huge beard.
Huge beard.
Actually, no, I was like, she's the savior, hun. Okay.
She's a savior. We're gonna build a statue of her.
She's
after I'm
stunning
done
and
with this
brave.
game.
But even though she doesn't say that, you're right. She does
I am the savior.
she's got some inconsistency with what she feels like is owed to her.
Yeah.
Some like kind of like, why can't I just leave if I want to? Like there's a little bit of that element to her character that hopefully becomes less and less. But
Yeah, once we see the game through, we could have another opinion, a totally different
I-
opinion by the
I
end
love
of it.
the opening lets you explore a bit, teaches you some basics again because I had to be refreshed on how you move and even like crouching.
Yeah.
I was like, I thought circle. No, it's square to crouch. Okay, I was kind of getting used to the controls again, and then it puts you out into this. After looking at the map, I'm realizing very small open area to start with, where
Mhm.
it's like this valley you get to explore. It's got a bunch of stuff to discover, some optional stuff on the side, some things that you can't explore yet. Like I was down in the mine shaft doing the one side quest, and there's a whole wall that says
Oh,
basically
yeah,
you don't
yeah.
have the technology to get through here yet.
Yeah.
There was one underground river that I swam down that said you don't have the technology to swim down here yet. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh man, there's a little Metroid-y going on here. I got to come
Yeah,
back
yeah, yeah.
later.
Um,
So
yeah,
that part's exciting to me because then you can see, even though the map's grayed out or whatever, it's all kind of fuzzy and covered up. You can see how freaking huge this is going to be. Like
Yeah.
how
They
many?
said this is PlayStation Zelda. As
Really?
far as like the tools
As
that you're
far
gonna
as scale?
unlock, and then you have to come back to those areas because you don't have the tools or the upgrades.
Wow.
the I think it's super smart the way that the game opens up because it's like the
Yeah.
area that you go into at first is like kind of like it's narrow but like it's open. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty narrow comparatively to the rest of when you look at the map that is fogged out, like you said. So it's like a good way to teach you, like, all right, like this is a reasonable amount of space for you to explore and
Yep.
still have plenty to do and kind of get used to
And
things.
it's big enough. You need to fast travel a little bit to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
campfires. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, just overall, I mean, just broadly speaking, this game is like just an improvement, complete improvement in all aspects.
Okay,
like
so
this
that
is the
my
game that they meant to
only
make.
my only negative on this game has been some of, I think, Aloy's character flaws. The way she was written and designed, I
Yes.
think, is one of the biggest drawbacks to the game. But that was true of the first game too. To be fair, that was one of the problems of the first game. So that aside, there's so much I love about this game. I know Derek was talking about how it's ugly. What are you smoking? This game is
Well, you guys didn't
ugly.
even hear. You cut me off, and I am not the only one
deserved it.
saying it. And all you have to do is go to Digital Foundry, and no, I'm not repeating it. I actually was gonna play it on 60 frames per second and ignore what he said. And then I looked at it, and I'm like, this looks like shit. And then I went in other groups, and they were like, I can't play it 60 frames per second. It's blurry. It looks terrible. I was like, agreed.
Get a better TV.
And they had
That's
to
your
drop
problem.
it to 30, and they had to do favor resolution.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say I'm finding it to be absolutely gorgeous, both resolution and performance-wise. But
Same.
maybe I'm on a CRT TV. Is that the problem? Is that I'm playing with the
I'm
three
on an
prongs?
OLED.
I'm just kidding.
So
I'm just kidding. I'm not on a CRT TV. I haven't done that since then.
I actually
Oh, I thought you
started. It defaults
I
to
was like, oh, he's on a budget. I'm not gonna judge him. I don't know.
it defaults to fidelity mode, right? Because like I actually didn't even
It
realize
does.
I was
Mine
playing in
does.
30 frames, and then I switched it, and I was like, oh right, this does feel better.
Mine was defaulted to maybe it's system settings. Mine was defaulted to performance mode.
okay.
Oh, that's interesting. Mine was
I-
defaulted to fidelity, and then I didn't like how every time I moved the camera, it was just slow as hell. So, I mean, that's the nature of 30 FPS. So, I switched it to performance, and I mean, I feel like I'm admiring it visually more and more that I play it. I don't know.
So
Maybe I'm just getting acclimated
I
to
switched over to quality mode while in that first little valley there with Varl, and there's some water, and there's Dan's favorite. There's some cliffs in the background.
it. Oh man, are there
And
cliffs in
so-
this game?
Dude, the
there are so many
cliffs.
cliffs.
Of the cliffs.
Dude.
So I switched it over to the quality mode. And so Derek, maybe this is what you're talking about, and you can help me if I'm not understanding what you're saying. So I went to quality mode. It's 30 frames per second. I did notice right away some motion blur as I turned the camera
Mhm.
with 30 frames per second. I didn't like that, and things just
Turned
didn't
off motion blur
didn't-
completely.
quite look as good to me. And then I also noticed some of the coloring when I moved the camera. Only when the camera shifted a little bit. I don't know if it was the shading or the color. Like on the cliffs, for example, I actually noticed them change a full-on shade on my TV. I was like, that's weird. I went back to performance mode. That issue wasn't there. Everything still looked great as I moved the camera around. I find it to be incredibly detailed, and the motion is super pretty. Like
Maybe it's the HDR. Maybe that you have to tweak it a bit.
I might need to do that. That's
Yeah.
true with the quality mode. I didn't think
Sure,
about that.
sure.
That's a good point. It could be lighting related.
Yeah.
But all that to say, I thought I'm thinking that with performance mode, it looks fantastic. And now I've got a how old is that TV now? 6-year-old Samsung 4K TV. It is certainly not top of the line by any stretch. Even then, it
Yes,
wasn't.
but even Jeff, he has probably the same TV as me, and a lot of people on OLEDs are agreeing with me, but Jeff is disagreeing with me, which is fine. But I'm telling you, it's not just me. There's a regular people that aren't PC Master Race that only have PS5s that are like, performance feels good. I'm gonna play on it because it feels good.
Uh-huh.
It does.
But the 1800, it's 1800p, which I've played a ton of games at 1800p.
Not
and they don't
1440?
look. No, it's 1800p and it's
Huh.
blurry. So that's what I'm complaining
weird.
about. It's if you look at the world, I'm not
Yeah.
talking about moving. I can just be
The
standing
the
still,
textures, you mean?
and everything is like blurred, and it looks bad. Whereas if you switch it over to resolution, it eliminates the blur and everything is crunched and tight like 4K. Everything is very, very tight visually.
Right.
It's
That's the
not
only
blurred at
4K setting,
all.
right? Yeah.
This is one of those moments where I feel like I need someone to come over, like yourself maybe, sit on the couch beside me, look at it on my screen, and be like, "It's blurry," and I'm like, "Okay, I'm just not seeing it." Like I need to find out, like, is it there
it
and
is.
I just don't see it, or is it just not that way?
Yeah,
Like,
I'm clearly missing it too. I don't know.
I mean, when I switched it, like I noticed some of the lighting changed a little bit all of a sudden, but I haven't noticed.
was me.
I
blur.
highly recommend, if you want to waste your time in this, if it's not a big deal, don't do it.
Sure.
No.
But watch the Digital Foundry breakdown, because the guy that's actually doing the breakdown always plays his games and always chooses performance every single time. And he literally says, I actually played this on resolution because I found the visual downgrade to be annoying. It does not look good. It's blurry, and he breaks it down and he's like, it's 1800p. It should not be looking like this. The aliasing is off. They did not do a good job with this. And that's how I felt, because I was
that's
like,
maybe something
well,
they'll
I'm
patch.
still going to try to do the 60 frames per second because I like.
It feels good.
I'm used to it now. I play
Yeah,
every
yeah.
game at 60 to 100 frames per second.
You're
I don't
I did
want to go to
some.
30.
I mean, you probably done way more research on that 60 frames per second, but like you're supposed to play games at 50 frames per second. 120 is even better, but like just motion wise, it
feels so much
it's
better.
natural.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
30 is like, what's going on? It's like a
Well-
lag when you.
Well, when you first switch to 30 and you're used to 60, it literally feels like it's chugging.
it
But
does.
now that I've played for 6 hours, I'm perfectly fine.
yeah, you kind of have to get used to it. Yeah.
I've made the decision that I prefer the way the picture looks with the resolution more than I care about the performance issue.
Okay. Speaking of visuals, I do think they've done an incredible job taking their character animation specifically
Oh,
up a
yeah.
notch.
Oh,
Dude.
dude.
So the
It is-
conversations you
You
have
know,
with
I
characters are much
just
more
finished
compelling.
Zero Dawn. I just like not finished it, but I just
Yeah.
I
I
didn't beat
replayed it. Replayed
I
it.
watched the
so.
story recap or whatever, but I played it like a week ago, and
Yeah.
I was like, "They look so unnatural. It is weird to watch them
Yeah.
The
talk to each
character
other."
models are
and Tim,
different.
like you're saying, like I mean, the character animations when they're talking to each other in this game, this is the part that's night and day.
Even
for
the
me.
side quests. So there's a side quest in
Yeah.
that first village where you can go talk to these two sisters who are experimenting with this weapon.
Yeah, yeah.
And they want you to go
Yes.
gather materials for you. Even their interactions with you and with each other, and the one character after you deliver it just kind of stares at you. It's very
Yeah.
funny, and
you're
it
like,
like goes like,
"Hi?"
"Hi." Like,
Yeah,
that was great, and
Yeah.
it had a lot of little nuance. It reminded me of the little moments that I loved from Life is Strange. Of course, animated totally differently, but
Yeah.
just like the little subtle like expressions. I'm like, dude, they're really getting
Wait.
it this time. They're really
when
getting
you go back to Horizon Zero Dawn, the character models of like when you're having a conversation and the camera's like all up on their face is a completely different character model than when you're just running around.
Right.
And there's definitely less disparate less of a difference here. Like it seems like it's basically the same character model, maybe slightly different, but it's
Well,
just so much better, you know.
And there's a character that you
This-
meet from. She's in the first game, and you meet her in Chainscraper. Her name's Petra. She's a side character from the first
Yes.
game.
Yep.
And I never would have known it from the first game. I guess I just don't remember the story very
She
well.
looks quite different.
But she looks very different. But also, she seems like, because I went back and talked to her down there by the new board game, which I'll talk about in a second. And that whole conversation, I'm like, these little subtle things. Is she super into Aloy? Like, it seems like she's super into
Oh
Aloy.
no, she is. Yeah. she
Okay.
is.
Everybody's obsessed with her. Let's be real.
Okay, so but it was
me.
the
She's the
animation of the
savior.
character,
She's
and
the
it was the
savior.
way
How can you not be?
she was looking at her and the expressions she was making as they talked that I was like, and
absolutely.
that's when it kind of hit me like, this is impressive what they've done with even
Yeah.
the side characters. That they did a really good job.
They
Like-
made it much more cinematic, like on
Yeah.
almost every level. I remember going to pick up side quests in the first game, and it's just the same cutscene every single time.
Right.
Where, I mean, again, granted, they're side quests; they don't need to be that cinematic, but where you're just standing opposite the person, the camera
Right.
switches.
That's what I mean. It's just all
Yeah.
up in their face, and
It's
just
exactly
and
what
very
Dan is talking
stoic,
about.
right?
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
stoic.
you guys-
very
you
dry.
guys
Their
try-
heads moving in weird
you
ways.
tried the
sometimes.
mini game yet? They introduced this game called Strike. Have you played the Strike yet?
I did the
haven't.
tutorial thing, but like I haven't dabbled yet. No.
So Strike is kind of very Final Fantasy style and Witcher style, and
Yeah.
really Assassin's Creed, where you've got this little sideboard game where you can collect pieces or cards or whatever. In this case, it's pieces that have different stats attached to them, and it's a grid. And in the tutorial, it's just a basic grid, and all the terrain's the same. But as you start, I've played a couple rounds of it. It changes the terrain, and your attacks and defense change based on what terrain you're sitting on and what direction you're facing. And so anyway, it's very interesting, surprisingly in depth, and one of those things that I'm like, hey, it's not my favorite mini game of all of these
Yeah.
mini games that have been introduced, but I do like it. I
It
think they put
seems
a lot of work into it.
quite complex. Like
It's-
unless I'm gonna get specific items that I have to play that in order to get where I'm like, man, I kind of wish I had that item. Like I don't know if I'm gonna be playing that. It just seems like too much.
Yeah,
going on.
I'm kind of making a decision now so I can get Elden Ring time in more thoroughly.
You're gonna skip this, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm
The
skipping.
Strike.
I'm trying to skip errands, but I keep naturally happening upon them. I'm like,
Yeah.
God dang it! I didn't mean
Well,
to collect that.
the
So,
ones where the
and I'm trying to
sisters
I
skip
are
did
the
watch
side stuff like that.
I did
like-
watch a thing that the guy who has already beat the game said that there are usually two types of players: people that like to mainline the story,
Yeah.
and then there's people that like to do everything in every area. And he said, don't do either one of those. He said that you need to be in the middle. So
Yeah.
do not get. He said, don't get caught
good.
up on errands. Do
Yeah.
those eventually if there's something that you can unlock that's worth it. But your
Yeah,
main
like a
thing is
weapon
you
or
should be
something.
you should be doing obviously the main story line, because he's the one that also talked about how this is basically like Zelda, where you unlock certain tools and you can only do that through the main story. But also just do some side missions so you stay at par on par with the leveling.
On or above. Yeah, I'm far above where I should be
I
at
like
this point.
I like
Yeah.
that advice in terms of like mixing and matching. Maybe explore every once in
Yeah.
a while, but then get back to a main mission because
Yeah.
I can.
Which
I
is
can get
how
very
I
sidetracked.
play
Yeah,
games. Like I even
exactly.
did it with Dying Light 2. Like I was real heavy on the side quests in the beginning, then I became OP, I mainlined it. And that's what I'll
probably
do
what
with
I'll
this
do
one.
too, yeah. Yeah.
I will
did that with
get
Cyberpunk
OP
as well. Yeah.
And I'll mainline it.
It's tricky because that like the one where you mentioned with the sisters, like unless they
That's the main
introduce,
weapon.
yeah, that's it, right. So unless they
It's like a
introduce
spear
that,
thing or something. I haven't used it yet, but yeah.
yeah, it with
It's
like an
good.
explosive tip, but like if you didn't go to that question mark, are you just not going to get that weapon down the line? So that's
Pretty
kind of
much.
that's kind of
No,
the tricky
you
thing.
can. No, that's just the first one. You can buy other
Oh,
ones.
okay, gotcha. Okay.
That just gets you. That's what gets it to you early.
I will
It is
throw
a cool
out
one. It's like a
there-
javelin that you can throw. It takes a while
Yeah,
to
I
like.
figured it was
charge
something
up and launch.
throwable, right? For
Yeah.
distance.
It takes a while to charge up the launch, so it's not something you can use once you're in combat. It's great to start
Yeah.
combat with.
I think it's supposed to be. Yeah, I think it's supposed to be like something you start with long distance, and then you can just kind of
Well,
run up.
let's
and-
talk about the combat real quick. I think it's generally what you experienced in the first game. You know, it's
Right.
very similar, but they've really changed some things. And so obviously you still, as you start a battle, the idea is don't start it yet. Scan the enemies, see who's around, make sure you get things tagged and know where each of the enemies are. If you want to stealth a couple first and then jump in for the tougher battles, you can do that. I also really like how when you scan them, and the first game might have done this, but maybe I just didn't pay enough attention. Let's say you scan one of the first basic enemies as a burrower, and you see them all over the place at the beginning.
Mhm.
So you scan a burrower, and then you can kind of cycle through its little info card, and you
Right.
can see its different parts. And it also underneath there tells you like, hey, this will be destroyed if you just kill it. You can use this for upgrades. It's very valuable. Whatever. It'll kind of give you a listing of those things.
It was not as in depth in the first one, though.
So this gives you a real cool overview of that.
Yeah. And the path.
And it actually kind of like shifts the zoom to see which part it's talking about. So like if it's on their antlers or if it's on their back or if it's on their tail, whatever, it kind of shows you where the part is. And so I've actually way more than in the first game, I'm already becoming really interested in, okay, I need to get the piece off their back, and I need both of the antlers. So I'll just start firing at the antlers, and I'll hit the piece off the back, and then I'll just do whatever I have to do to kill it after that. And I have found that to be way more fun. Like now, all of a sudden, I'm approaching even a battle of like, hey, there's 2 burrowers and a scrounger, pretty easy enemies, and I could just stealth each of them. Or I could try to take out their voice box first, then they can't call their friends, and then I take off the piece on his tail, and he's dead. And it's super satisfying. The combat I'm finding to be, and it's a combination of, I think they did it better, and they give you kind of an overview of what's important and why you should knock parts off. But also, I think I'm just paying more attention this time around. I think that the first game did some of that for sure. I just, in the first game, a lot of times I would just set a ridiculous number of tripwires and traps and stuff. Lure them into it, have them blow up, and then finish them off. And that was fun, but I was always like, man, why can't I never get the part I need? That's why, because you're blowing everything. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
So but I like the strategy in the combat here.
Yeah.
What I'm getting.
There's just
I
more.
think this game allows you to pick your style of combat that you prefer. If you prefer setting traps and stealthing it, you can do that. I prefer to, try to keep my distance as much as I can, and stealth is cool, but like, keep my distance and just arrow them until they die so they don't alert everybody. No. But if they come at me, I'm equipped for melee now. You can melee this one if you want to, and it's rewarding.
I love the weapon wheel now has more spots, because that was one of the annoying things with the first one, having to switch between the different bows, because certain bows don't have certain types of arrows. So you had to go into the menu. You had to equip that bow. Like here, you still would probably have to do that, but towards the end of the game, because you're gonna have kind of way more stuff at your disposal. But there's more than 4 spots now. I think it's like 8 spots, maybe 6. Okay.
But they splinter off if you get different types of arrows for one bow. Yeah.
Exactly. So I really appreciate that.
And I know the first game also had a whole bunch of things where, hey, know what type of enemy they are, what element they have, so you can know what to use against them.
Yep.
But is it new that it's like, hey, if they have an electrical power pack, overcharge it with electrical arrows? Was that new, or was that
they've expanded it here? They expanded it because there was what was the
ones used to be like, hey, if they're fire, hit them with ice. I thought that's what.
Well, there was the big ones that kind of have like they had the big belly sort of thing, and I think if you ignited that, they would explode. So they had it in the first one. It just wasn't as many sort of options or
this one. One of the first
types of ways
one of the first tougher enemies are these acid-based ones that actually aren't tough at all. All you need is to slow down time and hit one of those green things on the back.
It's just everybody in the town talked them up a big game, and then like as soon as you hit one in the back, you're like, oh, we're done here.
Yes. But I like that. I like that it's like, hey, there's going to be some of these enemies that you're going to figure out their one weakness. They're actually tough to fight, but if you do the one weakness, if you got the right arrow, boom, you can take them down just like that. And so
especially
the fire, the ones that they're kind of like the whatever, god dang it, whatever the main ones are.
The giraffe looking ones you're talking about?
No, there's like ones that are fire ones that they charge at you a little bit. Those are a little tougher, but they take their time to charge at you.
You mean like the things on the back are not
not
green, right? Okay.
They have antlers too, and 4 or 5 of those things
by the way,
on the back.
1 or 2 fire hits will kill you right away at the beginning.
Yeah.
So,
those guys are tough, but when you go to loot them, you get a lot. So, it's like, all right, I'm gonna have to take these guys.
Those are good ones to snipe from afar. I've discovered. You start shooting off their antlers, and you shoot off if you actually shoot off the fire pack, they can't shoot the fire at you, which is usually what kills you so quick. So I love all that stuff. I think the layers of strategy they already had in the first one are just elevated here, and the combat just feels better. And I think, Derek, you were saying this earlier, they've added a lot of additional RPG layers to this game that give you even more control over how you want to play. What do you want to upgrade?
Did they have as much of a skill? I just can't, even though I just played it, I didn't do an upgrade a lot. But is the skill tree much larger in this one?
Yeah, they did have a skill tree, and it was similar paths. Do you want to be more effective with stealth or arrows or melee, whatever? But yeah, it's definitely more. And I do like it. Almost reminds me of like the Final Fantasy grid system on
the sphere grid. Yeah,
a little bit. And not nearly as complex, of course. But
that's what I thought.
But like you unlock things around it, and then you get the big one in the middle. It's got some of that.
Yeah.
I do love that.
They made big changes to the melee too.
Yeah,
they did.
It looks so much better.
I've been upgrading melee specifically to experience it more.
What's really fun is
some changes to it.
If you do the fighting pit, which I recommend, upgrade a couple melee things, and you can do the fighting pit. It actually does a good job of showing you how you can do that charge attack on.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure that out.
It's a cool one, man, because you start doing it, and you can upgrade that so it charges up faster. By the way, it takes a long time. So if you have an enemy that's relatively weak, you won't charge it up in time. He'll be dead.
Gotcha.
But as you level it up, you can charge it up quicker, and all of a sudden they kind of get stunned and have this blue glowy thing on them. And eventually you can do like you saw in the trailer back in the day for Horizon Forbidden West, where you can do the jump kick off of them and slow-mo in midair and shoot them. Like it just looked really cool. You can do stuff like that over time. Like I haven't gotten there yet. Now I'm at the point where I can charge up enough, hit them so they're stunned, and then quick pull out my bow and arrow and shoot them, and they kind of explode, and it usually kills them. And it just it's a very cool like melee combo where your arrow can finish him off potentially. It's just I love it. I think they did a great job with the combat.
There's like way more.
Does she scream, "I am the savior"?
Savior.
We've established that she never says.
Call me the savior.
I am savior.
I mean, I know we started on some cons and stuff, but I mean, this game is overwhelmingly fun.
Yeah.
and addicting. So
Oh, by the way, Derek, there's 2 parts already I've gotten to. It's when you get to that fort that kind of gets you to the open world. So I don't know if you guys have gotten there yet, but there's a couple conversations you have there where they keep calling her savior, and she corrects them multiple times to say it's Aloy. Like she's corrected them a few times, and they've been like, "Oh, it's a savior."
No,
she's like,
it's bad.
She's correcting him by saying, "You call me savior," which equals Aloy. So she is still saying that she.
All right, fair enough.
You are literally the worst.
I think it's fair to say, I want to talk about this too. It's fair to say they've improved the way that you move around and specifically how you climb, but it's still not quite to the par of even, I think, most recent Assassin's Creed games, I think, do it better. I think Breath of the Wild did it better, but it's way improved. So at the last Horizon game, it was like very clear cut painted like yellow rails that you had to go between. And now, at first I thought that's what it was going to be, because at first that's what it was. You saw a couple yellow rails. I'm like, oh, okay, we're climbing again. Here we go. But now there was a rock face that I came up to, and I hit my focus scan, and it highlighted all these little places I could climb. I was like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah,
there's a lot of secrets in there too.
So it's a very improved way of climbing, even though I have found some of the climbing, specifically the jumping when you get up on a beam, to be a little janky. Like it doesn't really know what I'm trying to get it to do. But no more janky than the games I just mentioned could be.
There's a lot of controls going on, because like if you want to jump to something directly behind you, you're like on that thing, but then you have to hit circle, and she just like you have to remember the circle part for her to jump backward. It's like, all right, I mean, sure.
Yeah,
but
the grapple hook is cool. The grapple hook is cool, but so far kind of underused.
Yeah.
So far the grapple hook's cool, but a little underused. It's only certain parts where it's like, I need to get high. Oh, there's a little circle, I can jump to that. Otherwise, it's been a little underused.
But it looks cool though, the way that she kind of like pulls up towards it. And then also if you time it right, if you hit circle, because if you need to get something higher, the way she kind of she launches herself up, so that looks really cool.
I mean, after Halo Infinite, they really should use a grapple hook on enemies.
I agree. I wonder if that's something that, because I didn't see it in the skill tree. I looked through most of the skill trees. I didn't see anything grapple hook related there.
Could happen later on.
Yeah, could be. But yeah, the Halo grapple hook is amazing. Honestly, I know not everyone loves it, but even the grapple in Uncharted 4 at least gave you some creative ways to like, all right, I can grapple here and either climb up, or I actually need to use it to swing, to jump to there. This seems to be much more straightforward. That's out of reach. And sometimes we'll give you the grapple option to make it not out of reach. So it seems a little inconsistent, but it's fine. Like it's so improved from the first one. Exploring's been pretty fun, I think.
Cool.
Kind of bummed that Elden Ring's coming out.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, dude. They can't catch a break, because the first time it was Breath of the Wild.
So story-wise, I think it's interesting what they've done here, and I think they did a good job of not just saying everything from the first game doesn't matter. It's more like everything from the first game wasn't everything. Like there's more. So they did a good job of that. You know, a lot of times in these sequels they can undo it, but they didn't.
And I know why they had this conversation, but they were like, Varl was like, "Where's all your stuff?" She's like, "Yeah, I just lost it."
Yeah. I forgot about that. Yes.
You're the savior. You don't lose your stuff.
Like no, I think the actual line is she says,
she
says, I ran into some trouble and I lost some of my gear, and they don't really clarify. That's true. I wonder if they'll
I
explain
felt
that.
that was so lazy. Like, I'd rather you just not say anything.
If they never circle back to
Mind your
that, then
business. That's what happened.
if they never circle
Mind your
back to
business.
show you like maybe something happened, if they never show you that, then I agree.
No.
That's a pretty
Well,
lazy way.
it's that nonsense of like kind of like when Final Fantasy VII Remake 2 comes out, people are gonna be like, how are they gonna explain the materia not having the material? It's like
True.
just let it go, or I mean, I don't know, whatever.
I don't
Maybe they'll
know.
figure
I
out.
would like to
Going through that
actually.
portal
I would
changed
like
everything.
for
Sure.
game developers. Look, I'm still gonna enjoy games if they never change this, but I would like for some of them to sit down and go, okay, if we're gonna make a sequel, and the entire first game was them building this character up to this.
Yeah.
Can we make the sequel not just like somehow magically this person lost all their abilities or tools or whatever? Can we just have them start that way and then add on and make them even more powerful?
That's what they did with
and
the
have-
Batman games, right? Didn't they do that with the Asylum games?
No,
He had some of that. No, I thought he still had.
he
some
loses
of it.
most of it. at
Oh,
the
okay.
beginning
I
of
thought
the
for
game.
some
And you
reason
have to
thought
upgrade it in different ways in each
Yeah.
title,
okay.
basically.
Some of it stays. I think in
Some
this
of it,
one, one of the easiest ways to do what Derek's talking about, because I'm with you. One of the easiest ways is to actually introduce a new character, and now your old main character is actually a side character who maybe is training you or something. Like that's one of the easiest ways.
That's why
'cause-
Last of Us Part 2 made sense.
yeah,
Like you're literally starting over with somebody
Yes.
new. Yeah.
and I know you can't do that every time. Sometimes you have to have that character at the center, but it's a little easier than kind of being like,
Yeah.
well, I tripped and everything fell down the cliff, and now I don't know where it is. You know, it's a little bit.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, and I know they keep some of the skills that you had in the first one did carry over here as just kind of beginning skills, and that's cool. That's good.
It's just video game stuff,
Like
right?
like for example,
exactly.
taking over the charger to mount it. That's just a skill you have right away. Like you don't have
Yep.
to do
I'm
anything.
like,
and
thank God.
Yeah.
And then she has to, because of course she has to have a writing montage as the opening.
You know,
credits. Yeah.
they actually
Can't
now that
start
I'm
an
thinking
open world game
about it.
like that.
You know,
without
the main kind of like what's the word for it? Like the meat. No, not the meat. Like that enemy that's just easy and a beginner enemy that's throughout the game, but you know they're an easy one to defeat. It was the Watcher, and I'm sure they'll come back in some way, shape, or form. But now it's the Burrower. So now
Yeah,
she doesn't know how to override them because they're new. Like
Sure.
they did it. That was pretty smart of them to introduce a new kind of Goomba. Like that's their Goomba for the Mario. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like that's your basic enemy for a while at least.
So
and-
cannon fodder or something.
And you can't fodder, yeah.
Whatever it is. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's actually pretty smart because I don't think you could ever override a Scrounger, which is the one from the last game. So they did it. I think they probably thought through how do we make it obvious that she just didn't forget magically how to do some of this stuff. It's we have to introduce new similar level enemies, and that's what
Right.
the Burrowers are. Which
And
makes
these are
sense.
all
When
like
you-
different kinds of machines and weapons and stuff. That's why she's
Not-
kind of
not
naming
all of
them off
them.
the top
Like
of her head, right?
the Scrounger already existed in the first game, and so did the
Oh,
deer
okay.
looking one with the antlers. That one
Right,
already
right,
existed too. But anyway, I'm just kind of thinking out loud about that. I didn't think about that. How they did a smart thing to replace that basic enemy who, in the first game, you can take over Watchers, and I remember overriding Watchers to have them start fighting each other in the
Yeah.
first game. So
yeah. And
if
that's
that
still
skill's
a thing
magically-
that's going to come up because I've already upgraded a few of those skills. We just haven't gotten to that part of it. I haven't
you
gotten
have
that part
to
of the main
get
story
to what's
yet.
called the cauldron, where you see where that machine was created originally, and then you learn how to override it. Those are the things that you did
Haven't
in the
gotten there
first.
yet. Yeah.
Speaking of something smart, in the first one, I didn't like the limitations with the inventory. I thought it was super annoying. Like basically, I think it
yeah.
maxed out at 120. So like then you just couldn't pick up anything else.
had
Now
to keep
you have a
dropping stuff.
stash.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
There
There is
now she tells you, oh, this
Yeah.
is
This is a
going
little
to
bit too much.
This
Dude,
is
that,
going
she
to
has
was
said
in the
that-
Easy Allies review. That was in the easy. They're like,
Like
she
30
will not
times.
shut up. She will not shut up.
Hey guys, did you know that Aloy has a stash?
I know we can look in our stash later. Aloy, stop
mustache?
saying-
A
Dude,
mustache?
I think she needs to stop saying no to these friends that want to come with her because she's clearly going crazy talking to herself all the time. Like, let a friend come with you, would you? My goodness.
Especially
so-
when some of them can carry themselves like in
Sure.
combat. You're like,
Varl, like
why
Varl.
are you saying
Varl.
no?
totally could have come.
One more thing that I had taken a
what
note
she
of, I
said.
want to make sure I mention is great, that's gross. Is this is in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler, but I know I just got to this part in the game, just got past this part in the game, where you do finally get that what people called a ripoff of Breath of the Wild with the glider.
Oh,
So
yes.
I
Oh,
just
cool.
got that part. It's a really cool story moment leading up to that when you finally get it. I thought it was done very well, very cinematic, like we've already talked about, and it kind of like the story. You kind of feel like, everything just opened up. Here we go. It's that here we go moment for the game. And so anyway, but you get that at the end of that. And I've tried it a couple times. It is super cool. It is
Yeah.
it's a really cool way to travel around. So
Yeah,
when you
there's a
see
lot of-
those
A lot of cliffs, a lot of high.
yeah, when you see those
high
cliffs, and I've wanted to jump down, but I'm like, I mean, she can. By the way, she can jump from pretty high up and land without any problems. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
If I were Arthur from Red Dead Redemption 2, I'd be so dead from some of those heights. Like he dies, he dies so fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Out of the
anyway,
damn way.
the glider that she uses is super cool. So I like the way they implemented that.
Nice.
And it's important to have something like that in an open world like this.
Yeah.
You gotta have the ability to like, hey, I
Traversal.
climbed up super far, and now I want to just kind of glide down to that area. That's what made traversal in Far Cry 6 so fun. You could just have the airplane drop you and then hit your glider ability.
yep.
Just,
Far Cry 6 is fun because I don't think it's fun.
all right, Dying Light 2.
So yeah, I was gonna say, so Dying Light 2.
It's like a lot of the same ideas in those games.
I was gonna say that's first person, and I loved it. So that's saying something.
Absurd.
All right. Well, I think that's all we got for now. That's our essentially first impressions from what is clearly a very massive game. I am going to do my best to follow that advice that Derek was talking about, where it's, hey, have a balance of hitting the corners of the maps without hitting every corner and driving yourself crazy. Because I've done this before on open world games where I've gone too in depth, every question mark, and I kind of burn out on the game. And I'm like, really? I've got 10 main missions left? I've done that before.
I did that with Cyberpunk, and that's why I never got another playthrough of it, because
so I need to
burned
balance
every corner of that map, every question mark.
Because as of right now, it's like, this game is gorgeous. I love the way it plays. It's all I care about. There's no other games. And I totally can see what Derek's talking about. When a game comes out, now you're kind of holding a grudge against your current game. I've done that before too. And so right now I don't feel any of that. So I'm like, I'm going to take my time. I want this game to be 300 hours. I don't care. Like, I don't really though. I don't really.
No.
So I gotta balance that a little better. So anyway, but that's it. That's our first impressions of Horizon Forbidden West. What a cool game already.
Is everybody getting Elden Ring?
I am.
And what platform are y'all getting it on?
PC.
PS5.
Pony Station.
Terrible.
Are you not going to answer that?
Yes.
I prefer
I
gaming
asked
on
the
my
question.
TV because I paid so much money for it. So
Are you gonna? I'm assuming you're.
I
getting
like
PC
sitting
too,
down
right,
on a
Derek?
couch.
With your high-powered rig, you're getting a PC version of that, right?
I have PC and Xbox pre-order.
The minimum specs are what, allegedly pretty high. I don't know. I saw people like complaining that it seemed like kind of the minimum requirements are.
You saw
they
people
looked fine to
complaining?
me.
The minimum requirements aren't too bad, but if you want to get
No?
the most out of it, you do have to have a pretty good system.
Okay.
I'll be able to run it right around mid levels.
Yeah, I was gonna say you just have to be all right. Like, I mean, I think we're just at the place now with new games that you can't run it on a piece of crap anymore, guys.
I grabbed it on a CD Key sale. They had a pre-order for it last fall up, and it was like $34 or something like that for the pre-order on Steam on CD Key.
Yeah,
so
I bought it for $40, and then I bought the Xbox Collector's Edition. Otherwise, I wouldn't be buying it on console. But I wanted the Collector's Edition.
Yeah,
nerds.
Here's my problem with the timing of that game is I think I'm still going to be so enamored.
Cyberpunk Collector Edition is amazing.
I'm going to be so enamored with Horizon still. I predict that that'll come out and I'll try it because I want to be able to talk about it. I want to be part of the conversation.
Right.
I don't know how much I'll really be able to give to that game until Horizon credits roll. Maybe
I agree. Horizon is more my cup of tea. Yes.
Oh, is that your Kyle impression?
It's a noob.
In 2017, Horizon Zero Dawn came out, and I was in love. I was in love with Horizon Zero Dawn. It came out the end of February in 2017. A week later, the Switch arrived, and I got Zelda Breath of the Wild. I didn't play Horizon Zero Dawn again till like April, end of April, maybe. Like that game was done to me until I was all in.
That's literally what Derek was just saying. That's what happened with me with Breath of the Wild. I got obsessed with Breath of the Wild, and I was like, Horizons, whatever. I mean,
because it's one of the best games ever made. So
then I went back to Horizon. I actually started a brand new game on Horizon because it was one of those moments where I was like, I don't know what's happening. So I started over. Ended up loving that as well. Of course, I love that game. But yeah, sometimes there's just a game you'd rather play. So we'll see. With Elden Ring, I fully expect to try it, give my first thoughts, but then table it until Horizon.
I would say with this crew,
I guess
it's
it does
gonna
let
be
up a little bit.
Like, I'm gonna be the one that plays Elden Ring the most. Dan will eventually beat it, but I'll be the one that plays
pro
the
gamer,
most.
right?
Yeah, Dan's our pro gamer.
Yes.
Yep.
So I'll let you know how it ends. I think it's actually a nice.
I beat them all, but yeah. Okay.
I think it's a nice thing to balance though, because like the Souls like games don't like there is a story there, and there's definitely lore that you can dig into, but it's not as focused as Horizon, right? Horizon is a story focused game. So I think it's a good.
And there is tons
you
of
know.
lore and world building in. I think that's where
Yeah, yeah.
Horizon shines even more than the story. Like that was my Tomb Raider comparison mainly. Was like the story is fine, but like the world building is just it's insane
Well,
to me.
I already feel like Horizon had a great world that they built in this kind of country with these tribes, and there's all this stuff that happened.
And now we have new
And then
tribes that
once
we
you
got
get
to
into
learn
the new
about.
one,
Yeah.
then thankfully there's a character who's there to answer all your questions right at the beginning before you jump in there. And they have to lay it out for you. Here's these tribes, here's who gets along, here's who's the rebels faction. Like there's a lot going on. And by the way, Forbidden West is a little bit an overstatement. It's actually like relatively accessible West. Like a lot of people that are from your country.
Relatively accessible.
That's what it should.
That's why they call it the Forbidden West. Oh, you're really gonna explain the title? Thanks.
All the lefties in the West.
This is a political game.
Super political.
Don't go to the West. It's terrible.
All right.